My name was Farid. I was a security officer for Hamas, steeped in a world where obedience to the teachings of Islam was everything. By 37, I was a figure of respect, my presence often commanding silence. Yet, beneath the surface, a haunting emptiness gnawed at me, a void that grew more pronounced with each prayer recited. I was taught to fear dissent, to accept tradition without question. And yet, in the stillness of my darkest moments, I began to wonder, was I truly serving God, or merely a system designed to control my mind and spirit? The dreams that haunted my nights became a mirror reflecting a frightening reality: doubt. I could feel the ground beneath my feet shifting, but every thought of stepping away felt like a betrayal. Then the diagnosis came: cancer. I surrendered myself to the sterile embrace of the hospital, only to find myself in an experience that would fracture my very existence. I slipped away into the shadows of a barren desert, where darkness was pierced only by a blinding light. There, in the presence of Jesus, I heard my name called. In that moment, all my fears and the cloaked truths of my life were laid bare, revealing a spiritual battle far beyond what I could comprehend. Returning to my life felt like waking from a dream, but the pain had only just begun. I was cast out by those I once called family and friends, labeled a heretic for embracing a truth that illuminated the oppressive chains of my past. Every heartbeat carried the weight of betrayal and the fear of losing my identity, yet the peace I felt in my newfound faith was undeniable. So I took a leap into the unknown. In the shadows, I explored this profound truth. I reached out to clandestine communities that welcomed my quest for understanding. The more I learned, the more alive my prayers to Jesus became. I found purpose hidden beneath layers of fear, a calling that summoned me to awaken others to the reality that lies beyond deception and control. Join me as I delve into the depths of this revelation. Comment below. Where are you watching from, and what time is it in your corner of the world? And if you feel the stirring of truth tugging at your spirit, subscribe to Truth from Beyond. Together, we will uncover the liberation that Jesus offers. A journey that promises not only transformation, but the very essence of life itself. In a quiet neighborhood in Gaza, where the weight of tradition hangs heavily in the air, I existed like so many others, suffocated by the unyielding grip of expectations. I was a simple man, a laborer, weaving through the daily grind with my family, our hopes and dreams packed into the walls of our small home. Here, in this conservative stronghold, questioning our beliefs was a luxury few could afford. The spirit of honor and the pervasive shadow of fear loomed over us, always reminding us of the price of dissent. Yet, life has a way of unraveling threads we think are tightly woven. It was during one ordinary day that my world shattered. I was diagnosed with cancer. The doctor's words cut deeper than any blade, sending me spiraling into a void of despair. As I sat in the sterile white room, the weight of it all felt suffocating. Panic gripped my heart. I thought of my family, the life we'd built, now threatened by this hidden disease. I looked to my faith, praying fervently to Allah for guidance and healing, hoping for a miracle. Little did I know that the true revelation awaited me beyond the threshold of death. In the weeks that followed, I spiraled into darkness. The cancer ravaged my body, and I approached what felt like the edge of existence. In a moment of utter helplessness, I slipped into unconsciousness. That's when the encounter began. I found myself in the most radiant light, a warmth enveloping me that transcended any earthly feeling. Standing before me was Jesus. His presence was indescribable, a hero of a different kind, piercing through the veil of my understanding. As I gazed into his eyes, they held the weight of truth, exposing the layers of deception that had shrouded my life. He revealed truths about the spiritual war waging around us, grounding my experience in the context of a world marked by conflict and division. I saw flashes of political figures, the elite puppeteering the masses with hidden agendas designed to manipulate, to divide us further. Leaders whose facades concealed their corruption. The awakening was profound. I understood that the battles we faced were never merely physical, but fundamentally spiritual. Yet that understanding came with a warning. The world teetered on the brink of a seismic shift. Such visions ignited a fire in my soul, urging me to look beyond what was visible and challenge the foundations of everything I had believed. Jesus spoke of deception, not just in the political realm, but woven into the very fabric of society, relationships, and faith. Each word he uttered resonated with a sense of urgency, compelling me to embrace a new path. He reminded me how easy it was to remain blind, to follow traditions without questioning their validity. A truth so profound that it could awaken souls from slumber, shattering their complacency. I felt the burden of responsibility. An awakening was necessary, not just for me, but for those I loved. As I returned to my body, I realized that despite the cancer, I was gifted a second chance, not just to survive, but to live for a truth higher than myself. In those tumultuous moments before waking, I recognized the frailty of life and the gravity of the choices we make. There was an urgency to share these revelations, an imperative to combat the spiritual war that enveloped us. I began to grasp the intricacies of the society we lived in and the celestial truths hidden beneath our daily struggles. I knew that my healing would become a testimony, a beacon of hope amid darkness, pushing me to rise against the waves of deception that threatened to engulf us all. And as I opened my eyes, I felt the transformation reverberate through my being. The world around me, now tinged with vibrant hues, beckoned me forward into the unknown. My journey was far from over. The revelations had only just begun to scratch the surface. What awaited ahead lay shrouded in mystery, yet the echo of Jesus' words urged me to step into the light and embrace the calling that awaited me. I've always been seen as a pillar in my community, a 37-year-old security officer for Hamas, respected, but often misunderstood. My presence carried weight, my demeanor serious, carrying the expectations of those around me like a heavy cloak. People looked to me as an embodiment of strength and loyalty, a protector in the eyes of others. Yet inside, I stayed trapped in a maze of contradictions. The faith I practiced, so deeply ingrained in my daily routine, started to crumble under the weight of an emotional void that echoed unbearably louder each passing day. There was a conflict brewing within, a spiritual emptiness I couldn't shake, while my heart yearned for something deeper. Months turned into years, and as the political landscape around me shifted violently, so did my internal struggles. Each day began to feel like I was trudging through thick fog. I performed my duties, patrolling the streets, ensuring safety for my people, all while my soul felt increasingly heavy. The war raged outside, driven by some hidden agenda that felt orchestrated by an elite few who manipulated life for their own gain. I often found myself questioning the integrity of our mission, our cause. Was it truly divine, or were we being pawns in a far more sinister game? As the doubts deepened, so did my spiritual isolation. My body started to wane. Fatigue settled in, lingering like a pervasive shadow. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, I collapsed. I was rushed to the hospital, and there, in a sterile white room, the diagnosis hit me like a freight train. Cancer. The word throbbed in my mind, echoing with despair. I was abruptly confronted with my own mortality, and it struck me. I had been living half alive, merely performing rituals to appease an absent spirit. As I lay in that bed, I began to confront the reality of my life and the narrow path I had walked. Then came the night that shattered everything I thought I knew. As I slipped into unconsciousness, darkness consumed me. But in that void, something remarkable transpired. I found myself enveloped in a blinding light, feeling warmth fill every fiber of my being. Suddenly, he was there, Jesus. I was overwhelmed by his presence, a divine truth radiating from him. His eyes held an infinite well of wisdom, and as he gazed into my soul, I felt layers of deception peeling away, exposing the raw truth of my existence. He revealed a world beyond my comprehension, and in a heartbeat, I understood the spiritual war that enveloped us all. Jesus spoke of a deeper reality, a fabric woven with the threads of politics, society, and spirituality. I witnessed scenes of our world, leaders manipulating emotions, sowing discord, designed to distract us from the truth. The elite moved like shadows, orchestrating chaos while ordinary people remained oblivious to their hidden agendas. The revelations struck me like lightning. They felt like an awakening, shaking the very foundations of my beliefs. Every battle we face is not merely physical, it is a spiritual conflict, one that threatens our very essence. As I grasped these insights, I realized I was being called to move beyond the confines of my own doubts and fear, to embrace a new understanding, and to share this awakening with those still trapped in deception. As I awoke, back in my hospital bed, I could feel the weight of Jesus' message pulsing through my veins. I was no longer the same man. I had been given a second chance, an opportunity not just to confront my illness, but to confront the truth of my life. I knew my testimony would resonate, serving as a beacon of hope to others languishing in the shadows of their own spiritual wars. The world outside was still filled with chaos, but now I understood the true nature of the battle I was meant to engage in. Urgency filled my heart. There was so much to reveal, so many lives waiting to be awakened. And I realized I had a message to deliver, one that would shake the very foundations of what people believed and illuminate the path forward. As I knelt in prayer, a familiar routine transformed into an unsettling experience. Instead of peace, I found myself overwhelmed by an emptiness that curled around my heart like a serpent, squeezing tighter with every whispered supplication. The doctrines I had followed all my life now stood before me like a crumbling edifice, their foundations riddled with doubt. Each prayer felt like an echo in an empty chamber, returning to me with a haunting stillness. I was a respected figure in my community, yet within, I was unraveling. My unquestioning loyalty to the teachings I had embraced began to feel less like faith and more like shackles. It didn't take long for these feelings to manifest into intense dreams. I would awaken in a cold sweat, visions swirling in my mind, a barrage of images that seemed to tear at my very soul. In these dreams, I saw myself standing on a precipice, walls crumbling around me, each block representing a belief I once held dear. I questioned who truly controlled the narrative I had perpetuated for so long. Was this religion I defended a gateway to truth, or was it a tool used to manipulate? A hidden agenda loomed in the shadows of my consciousness, whispering terrifying possibilities. My role and purpose felt like a carefully constructed facade, crafted to keep me loyal to a system I was increasingly beginning to challenge internally. As those dreams escalated, so too did my sense of disconnection. The community, once a bastion of support, became a stark reminder of the isolation I felt inside. I attended lectures and services, but the words of the speakers grazed my ears without ever penetrating my heart. The rituals that once filled me with reassurance now felt mechanical, like parts of a machine churning out obedience. My faith had become an obligation rather than a source of life. During moments of silence amidst the prayers, I would catch myself pondering, what if everything I believed was constructed on pillars of deception? The thought sent chills down my spine, yet I felt an inexplicable urge to seek the truth hidden beneath layers of dogma. My emotional conflict deepened, and as I continued grappling with these questions, I noticed a growing urgency within me, a calling to explore beyond the confines of my prescribed beliefs. I began to research, to read about the ineffable truths that had been obscured for so long. I stumbled upon philosophies that spoke of awakening, of breaking free from the constraints imposed by the elite. The same people I had long believed were leading us towards salvation. The revelation hit me like a thunderbolt. I realized that the elite's control was intricately woven into the very fabric of our beliefs, exploiting faith to maintain power and division among us. At that moment, I recognized the urgency to awaken from this slumber, to not just exist, but to seek out a deeper understanding of the very essence of life. Then came the pivotal moment that forever altered my path. In the depths of my turmoil, I fell into a deep unconsciousness, brought on by my illness, drowning in the shadows of my despair. It was there, in the darkest recesses of my mind, that I encountered Jesus. His presence washed over me like a tidal wave, a force that pierced through my confusion and illuminated my spirit. In those sacred moments, he revealed profound truths that encompassed every layer of my worries, about the spiritual war unfolding in the world, the deceptive nature of power, and the urgent call for awakening. Jesus presented me with visions of society fragmented by deceit, communities torn apart, people blinded by false narratives. It was an awakening, a crucial revelation that radically shifted my perspective on everything I had ever known. I understood then that the true battle was not just against physical oppression, but against the very lies we had accepted as reality. As I returned to consciousness, the weight of these revelations surged through me like electricity. I was filled with an urgency to share this newfound wisdom, to awaken others in my community, still trapped in the cycle of deception. I understood the spiritual war that was raging ahead and felt a fire igniting within me, a desire to confront those hidden agendas head-on. The fear of isolation began to fade, replaced by a determination to reveal the truth I had encountered, to lead others towards their awakening, just as I had experienced. And even as I emerged from that darkness, I knew this journey was only beginning, with challenges and revelations lying ahead that would shape not only my own destiny, but the fate of those around me. As the chemotherapy treatments dragged on, a suffocating darkness enveloped me. It was during one of those long nights, when the pain seemed to blur the edges of reality, that I experienced what felt like the end of my journey. I faded into unconsciousness, leaving behind the sterile hospital room filled with the sounds of machines beeping and nurses whispering. The sensation was surreal, as if the universe itself had stripped me bare. Suddenly, I was in a vast, desolate desert, cloaked in shadows, with nothing but the weight of my thoughts pressing down on me. It was in that emptiness that a blinding light pierced through the darkness, illuminating everything around me with a brilliance I can barely describe. From within that light, I heard a voice, one that resonated deep within my soul, calling me by name, Farid. It was Jesus. His presence was overwhelming, filling every void within me with warmth that felt like home. In that moment, all my doubts, fears, and burdens were laid bare before him. He looked into my eyes, and I felt as though he could see every sin, every regret, but also every longing for truth and love. His gaze was penetrating and compassionate, unraveling the lies I had clung to for so long. I realized that the faith I had nurtured was entangled in an illusion, a hidden agenda crafted by those who utilize belief as a means of control. Jesus began to reveal truths that shook the very foundation of my understanding. I saw visions of the geopolitical landscape, hidden machinations of the elite manipulating not just nations, but hearts and minds. I understood, perhaps for the first time, that the spiritual war being fought was not merely a matter of doctrine. It was a battle for the very essence of humanity. I was shown how those in power have benefited from division, how they orchestrate conflict to keep us distracted, to prevent us from awakening to our true potential. I felt the urgency of a call to action, the weight of responsibility resting on my shoulders, as I stood at the precipice of profound revelation. As the visions intensified, I was swept into a whirlwind of images, crowds gathered in protests, families torn apart by ideologies, and leaders standing on stages, spouting rhetoric that masked their true intentions. In these moments, I grasped the deception woven into the fabric of society, how easily fear can be manipulated, and how often people choose to accept false narratives instead of seeking the truth lurking beneath the surface. I realized that many are trapped within their convictions, blindsided by a loyalty that serves not their spirit, but the egos of those in power. The awakening I felt inside was more than personal. It was a calling to help others break free from these chains that bind them. In the presence of Jesus, I was reminded that awakening isn't only about recognizing the lies we've been told, it's about embracing the truth buried deep within each of us. This truth is a sacred fire that, once ignited, has the power to illuminate not just our paths, but the paths of countless others. As Jesus spoke, the weight of his words resonated within me. He emphasized the importance of seeking knowledge, of challenging the narratives imposed upon us. I felt a divine inspiration washing over me, a conviction that I had been granted a second chance to stand up and advocate for truth. This was no longer just about my healing. It was about fighting a war of the spirit, a call to arms against the forces of deception that sought to keep us in shadows. Just as the visions began to shift and fade, I felt a pull, urging me back towards the physical realm, back to the hospital room I had left. But even as I returned to my body, the encounter with Jesus lingered, intertwining with my very being. I knew my illness had thrust me into this spiritual war, this battle of ideas and beliefs. The urgency I felt was like a drumbeat in my chest, compelling me to rise, to share what I had experienced. The world around me needed awakening, a revelation of the hidden truths that could break the chains of division. As I opened my eyes, I could almost hear the echoes of Jesus' voice still resonating, calling me to action, leaving me with a profound realization that the fight towards understanding and enlightenment had only just begun. As I stepped back into the world, the light of my awakening felt like a flame against the harsh winds of reality. The echoes of my encounter with Jesus lingered, but I was soon met with a blizzard of disbelief and hostility. I returned to my home, hoping to find solace and understanding, only to be met with a violent rejection that cut deeper than I could have imagined. My family looked at me with a mix of anger and fear, their eyes filled with a betrayal that ripped at my very soul. I was suddenly the heretic, the traitor in their eyes, a man who had forsaken everything. That defined me, my faith, my identity. The weight of their judgment descended upon me like a heavy shroud, suffocating and isolating. Guilt began to coil around my heart, constricting my every thought. How could I have turned my back on the teachings that had guided me for so long? The very beliefs that had formed the foundation of my life now felt like chains that bound me to a lie. The family that once embraced me now seemed a world away, and the distance between us was filled with unspoken words and fractured trust. My friends, those I had shared prayers and moments of joy with, turned their backs. Some called me deluded, others spoke of me with disdain, igniting a firestorm of doubt within me. I wondered if I had truly experienced a revelation, or if I had succumbed to a dark deception. As those days stretched into weeks, the hollow ache of loneliness became unbearable. I wandered through my daily life like a ghost, moving amidst people who once filled my heart with warmth, but now only fueled my despair. In the silence of my home, I replayed the visions I had seen, of a world consumed by a spiritual war where leaders harnessed fear to control the masses. With every memory came the pain of isolation, as I realized the urgency of the truth I had witnessed. I'd seen Jesus as an embodiment of that truth, yet here I was, unrecognized and alone, battling feelings of inadequacy in a society steeped in misunderstanding. Moments of clarity would emerge amidst the shadows. Revelations about the elite's hidden agendas spun through my mind like a tempest. I recalled the wisdom of Jesus, the importance of recognizing the manipulation around us, the necessity to awaken from the slumber of complacency. This wasn't just about my awakening. It was about sparking a flame in others who remained trapped in deception. But how could I do that when I was ensnared in my own web of grief and rejection? Those thoughts tormented me, each question trailing like a shadow, relentless in their pursuit. My identity, which had once felt so certain, was now a crumbling facade. With each passing moment, as I faced the reality of my decisions, a part of me clung to the hope that this pain might lead to something greater. Perhaps my journey, marred by its trials, could serve as a catalyst for others. Perhaps if I could muster the courage, I could share the revelations that had been bestowed upon me, urging those I loved to confront their own spiritual battles. Yet the fear of being cast out further held me firmly in its grip. I yearned for connection, for understanding, for a moment when the hearts of my family might open once more. But the fear of their rejection loomed larger than the desire for reconciliation, and I found myself caught in a tug of war between my newfound faith and the memories that insisted I remain who I once was. I took a deep breath, hoping to forge a path through the darkness that threatened to consume me. The need for awakening, for truth to emerge, pulsed through my veins like a lifeblood. My vision became clearer, and I understood that my struggle was not in vain. It was a bridge into a new realm of understanding. Perhaps my journey was a precursor to a greater awakening, a challenge to reframe my loss of identity into a mission of spreading truth amid a world riddled with deception. As I pressed on, seeking the courage to confront my family and friends, I felt a strange mix of fear and determination building within me. A signal that the path ahead, though fraught with conflict, could potentially lead to profound transformation, not just for me, but for all those shrouded in darkness. As I navigated this tumultuous phase of my life, feeling the cold weight of rejection, I began to seek knowledge in secret. No longer able to ignore the deep resonance I felt when I thought about Jesus and the teachings I'd glimpsed in my near-death experience, I turned to the internet, a realm where anonymity allowed me to explore without the crushing weight of judgment. I found forums and communities filled with like-minded seekers, individuals who, like me, felt estranged from the paths they once followed. Each click brought me closer to a truth I urgently needed to understand, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a flicker of hope ignite within. Engaging with these online groups felt both liberating and terrifying. I was peeling back layers of deception that had long been fed to me, realizing how often fear was wielded as a weapon by those in power, the elite whose agendas masked themselves in the guise of religious zeal. As I shared my story, my doubts, and my questions, I found solace in the responses from others who had traveled similar paths. Their journeys mirrored my own fears. Their revelations echoed my own awakening. Each interaction deepened my conviction that I was not alone in this spiritual war, a battle fought not only within me, but across the globe, as countless souls yearned for liberation from the bonds of falsehood. I began to pray to Jesus with a sincerity that frightened me, yet offered me peace. These were no longer mere whispers of hope. They were cries from my heart for guidance, for strength in this spiritual awakening. I sought answers, clarity, and a connection that my previous beliefs failed to provide. As I delved deeper, I felt a curiosity bubbling within me, an eagerness to learn more about the principles of love, forgiveness, and compassion that Jesus embodied. The more I discovered, the more I craved that connection, that sense of belonging, even if it meant stepping away from everything I had known. In my search, I learned about the importance of baptism as a sacred act of faith and renewal. It represented more than just leaving the past behind. It symbolized an embrace of truth while shedding layers of deception. As my desire to follow this new path grew, I realized I had to take that leap, to commit myself fully to the truth I had uncovered. I began to plan for a clandestine baptism, a deeply personal act I had to undertake away from prying eyes. The fear of being discovered intertwined with the excitement of embracing a new life, filled with authenticity and spiritual richness. Those moments leading up to the baptism felt surreal. Every heartbeat echoed with the weight of my decision. I could picture the place, the small, secluded group that would witness my commitment. The anticipation and trepidation wrapped around me, like an anxious friend, both comforting and unnerving. I knew this plunge into cold water would not just be a physical act, but a declaration against the hidden agendas that had long subdued so many. In that brief moment of immersion, as the water enveloped me and I emerged anew, the revelations of my journey surged within me, propelling me into a life unshackled from the chains of my previous fears. This awakening felt like the dawn breaking through a long night, illuminating the darkness with the warmth of hope. Yet the journey ahead was daunting, fraught with the uncertainty of how my family and former friends would respond. I realized every step I took towards the truth would involve confronting the very essence of my identity. I was no longer just Farid, a security officer bound to old beliefs. I was a man reborn, armed with revelations that could challenge the very fabric of my community. As I prepared to face the world, I felt a growing determination to share what I had learned, to encourage others to seek their truths, and to remind them that beneath the facade lies a deeper reality waiting to be discovered. In the aftermath of my awakening, I began to sense a profound urgency driving my every thought and action. The experience I had encountered in my near-death state was not merely a personal revelation. It felt like a divine calling, compelling me to a greater purpose. I realized the truths unveiled to me by Jesus were not to be kept hidden within the shadows of my own heart. I had been entrusted with knowledge that transcended my personal struggle, knowledge that could shine a light on the spiritual war unfurling all around us. The awareness that I had been a pawn in a game orchestrated by those with a hidden agenda struck me like a bolt of lightning. As I grappled with this newfound understanding, I felt a burning need to raise awareness about the deception plaguing our world. The manipulation by the elite was omnipresent, cloaked in societal norms and cultural edifices that kept the masses in check. I often reflected on how easily people accept narratives without questioning their foundations. My journey had taken me from the depths of despair to the heights of enlightenment. Yet I understood that many remained trapped in dark cycles of ignorance. It was a silent battle, one fought without swords or guns, yet the wounds inflicted were just as real, perhaps even more devastating. Fear crept in as I contemplated sharing my transformation. I was fully aware of the risks involved in speaking out against the establishment I had once embraced. The potential backlash from family and friends loomed large, and the very community I belonged to became a source of anxiety. Yet, the truth flowing through me was relentless, its urgency overshadowing my reservations. How could I stay silent when I recognized the signs of spiritual oppression around me? I envisioned a future filled with awakening, but knew it relied on brave voices willing to step forward and challenge the status quo. Each night, I would pray for courage, asking Jesus to guide me as I felt the weight of my mission grow heavier. I longed for a way to articulate the experiences I had undergone, to translate the visceral understanding of the spiritual war into words that would resonate with others. I envisioned gatherings where people came together not to debate beliefs, but to share their own journeys, stories of awakening that might inspire others to look beyond the veil of a deception. The importance of community became clear. Together we could illuminate paths for those still lost in shadows, amplifying voices of truth in a world steeped in manipulation. With every prayer I felt a resolve hardening within me. I envisioned my transformation as a beacon, shining through the darkness that enveloped so many. I planned to speak not only from my personal experience, but also from the revelations of the deeper truths I had witnessed. I knew that sharing these insights about societal manipulation, division, and the hidden agendas of the elite could spark the flames of awakening needed to ignite the hearts of others. This was my mission, to encourage those around me to confront the spiritual war raging within and around us, allowing them to take their first steps into the light of truth. Each moment spent in deliberation with Jesus fortified my spirit, urging me forward, and I began to feel ready to share my message with the world, despite the cost it might entail. In the days that followed my awakening, I felt an urgent need to break free from the shackles of my past. The very walls of my home, once a sanctuary, now felt like a prison, confining me to beliefs I no longer adhered to. It was clear that my journey demanded a drastic measure, an act of symbolic courage and liberation. One night, under the cloak of darkness, I made the decision to leave. I gathered a few belongings and stepped out into the vast unknown. The desert stretched out before me, both daunting and liberating, a testament to the journey I was about to undertake in search of spiritual freedom. Every step I took felt heavy with both pain and fear, yet there was also a buoyancy in my spirit. I was shedding the layers of deception that had once defined me, and with each footfall, I felt a transformation beginning to take shape. The crisp night air filled my lungs as I ventured deeper into the wilderness, embracing the solitude that came with it. In the vast expanse of the desert, I found a profound serenity amidst the chaos of my life. I began to clarify my thoughts, recognizing that I was not abandoning my past, but rather reclaiming my truth. This was my spiritual war, a battle fought not against flesh and blood, but against the ideologies that had held me captive for far too long. During this journey, I felt an overwhelming urge to share my testimony, to quietly evangelize among those I had once considered family and friends. It required a careful approach. Each interaction demanded sensitivity and courage. I began reaching out to old connections, planting seeds of truth in conversations that had once been filled with silence or fear. I spoke of my awakening, of the revelation I had received from Jesus, and how it transformed my life. There were moments of hostility, skepticism, and even anger directed at me, but I remained steadfast. Each small victory, each glimmer of understanding in their eyes, fueled my resolve to continue. Freedom was not just a personal journey. It was a collective movement toward awakening and light. As I ventured through the desert, the stark beauty of the landscape mirrored my internal transformation. The scorching sun and the biting cold nights became metaphors for the struggles I faced and the hope that flickered within me. I embraced the pain as part of my path, a necessary companion in the quest for liberation. I began to realize that the journey was about more than just me. It was about those still trapped in the web of deception. I felt called to be a voice for the voiceless, a lighthouse for those lost in the spiritual war. Each story shared, each heart touched, became a step toward dismantling the hidden agendas that sought to keep us divided. Years passed after those initial steps into freedom. I found myself in a country where practicing my faith openly was not just tolerated but celebrated. I became a missionary, eager to share the stories of transformation that had emerged from the trials of my life. I spoke fervently about Jesus and how the liberating truth he offered could shatter the chains of oppression. Sharing my journey resonated with many who faced their struggles, revealing the universal longing for truth and awakening that dwells within us all. Yet underneath the surface of my newfound freedom, a yearning remained in my heart, a hope of reconciling with my family and one day returning to Gaza to share the message of salvation and freedom I'd discovered. In this journey, I came to recognize that despite the challenges and sacrifices, the liberating truth of Jesus could indeed transform lives. It showed me that even in our darkest adversities, a new calling can emerge, leading us out of the shadows and into the light. I was no longer defined by my past, but rather empowered by the truths that had shaped my journey. I carried with me not only my story, but also the hope that one day others would join in the awakening, breaking free from the bondage of deception that seeks to ensnare us all. I felt a growing determination to continue this fight, to remind others that there is always a path to liberation, even when it seems obscured by the chaos of this world. And as I reflect on this remarkable journey, I realize how profound it is to wake up from a life once shrouded in darkness and fear. Have you ever felt the weight of your existence resting on questions that linger in the shadows? Questions about the systems you've trusted, the beliefs you've followed, and whether there lies a deeper truth beneath them all? The spiritual war I encountered isn't just mine, it's ours. Each of us walks a path that connects us to something greater than ourselves, inviting us to explore the boundaries of our understanding. My experience was not merely a moment of personal awakening, it was a call to action. Jesus opened my eyes to the manipulation present in our world, urging me to recognize the hidden agendas of those in power. It is an ongoing battle for our hearts and minds, a struggle that demands we all engage. I may have found my truth, but what about you? Are you still tangled in the web of inherited beliefs? Or do you feel the stirring of something deeper calling you to break free? I want to hear your thoughts. What have you experienced that challenges the narratives around you? Please share in the comments below. Your story matters, and together we can build a community of seekers ready to confront the lies that divide us. And if you feel a resurgence of hope, something pulling at your spirit to dive deeper, don't leave without subscribing to Truth from Beyond. Hit that notification bell, because the journey ahead promises revelations that will further illuminate our paths. In our next video, we will explore another astonishing testimony of transformation and healing that defies the odds. This journey is just beginning, and I invite you to join me as we uncover the layers of truth that await. I'm Farid, and I express my heartfelt gratitude for taking this time to explore these profound reflections with me. Remember, as we unearth the truth, together we can emerge from the shadows and face the light. Until next time, remain steadfast,